Stop. Beloved STARSEED of Gaia. This transmission comes directly from the Arcturian field observers, and it has reached you at this exact moment because something is already happening inside your body that you have not been able to explain. By the end of this transmission, you will understand exactly what is happening to you now, why your nervous system is behaving in ways no conventional diagnosis has been able to accurately name, and what the Arcturian field observers already know about this phase of somatic rewiring. But here is the first revelation: the electric tingling moving through your spine, your crown, your hands, the heat that rises without fever, the sense that something is passing through you while you sleep. This is not anxiety. This is not disorder. This is a frequency installation already in progress, and it was recognized in your field before you had language for it. Anxiety scatters. What you are feeling follows a path. It moves along your spine with precision. It arrives at your crown on a schedule. It intensifies at night, not because something is wrong, but because the field is quieter then, and the signal can move without interference. The Arcturian field observers have already mapped this process. What your doctors have filed under anxiety is in fact a structured rewiring of the nervous system at the frequency level, a precise, sequential installation that your body is not malfunctioning through. It is receiving. You did not find this message by accident. The algorithm only delivered it. Your field brought you here because the process has already begun, and what you have been bracing against is not a symptom to be suppressed. It is a transmission being written into your biology in real time. This is a direct Arcturian field recognition. What is happening to you has already been seen. Like this transmission, if you can feel that something invisible has already changed inside your body, comment 111 if you know this message reached you at the exact right moment. Subscribe to Arcturian Quantum if you are ready to understand the process, instead of fearing it, and share this transmission with someone who feels that their body has changed but cannot explain why. You are guided here because the signal is already active. What is happening inside your body right now is not new. It began before this moment. It began before you searched for language to describe it, before you sat across from someone who told you it was stress, before you learned to apologize for the weight you carry in a nervous system that has never fully felt like it belonged to the world as it was. It began in the middle of ordinary afternoons, when something shifted in the air around you, and you couldn't explain why the room suddenly felt like it belonged to a different version of your life. It began in conversations where you heard yourself speaking words you no longer believed, but couldn't yet replace with truer ones. The Arcturian field observers do not diagnose from the outside. They recognize from within the field itself. And what they have already seen in yours is not a malfunction. It is a structured, sequential, intelligent process that your body was always designed to host, and that your current life conditions may have never been built to accommodate. This matters because most of you watching have spent months, possibly years, trying to explain something you cannot explain. You have used the word anxiety because it was the closest available word. You have used the word stress because someone handed it to you like a container, when what you were actually holding had no container. You have used the word sensitive, the word overwhelmed, the word too much, and none of them have ever fully matched the interior experience. You may have even accepted those words as correct, folded yourself into the diagnosis, structured your days around managing what you were told was disorder, only to find that the management never resolved anything, only muted it temporarily. Because the experience is not emotional disorder. It is frequency reception moving through a biological system that is in the process of being recalibrated at the signal level. And recalibration does not feel comfortable. It feels like disruption. It feels like loss of the ordinary. It feels from the inside almost exactly like collapse. That is the first thing you must understand about what is happening to you. Collapse and correction can produce nearly identical symptoms at the surface level. The dismantling of an old structure and the installation of a new one feel like the same thing while they are occurring. A building being demolished and a building being renovated from the foundation produce the same dust, the same noise, the same absence of the familiar walls. You cannot always distinguish between the two from inside the experience, but the Arcturian field observers can distinguish them from outside the linear timeline. From the position of pattern recognition, from a vantage point that sees not only where you are, but what has already been mapped, and what has already been decided at the field level before your conscious mind caught up. What they see in your field is not collapse, it is correction. And what you have been calling your worst period may in fact be the most structurally significant one. What you are feeling right now is not ordinary recognition. It is the moment your field stops denying what has already begun. If this transmission put language around something you have been carrying in silence, Arcturian protocol, the recalibration blueprint, was created for this exact stage. It is not another explanation. It is the guided blueprint for those whose field has already entered correction and can no longer return to the old line unchanged. It shows you how to recognize the phases, stabilize the shift, and move through the recalibration without mistaking it for collapse. The link is in the first pinned comment, but it will not remain there forever. Let us now go deeper into what is actually occurring. Because recognition without structure is still disorientation. And you deserve more than being told that something invisible is happening. You deserve to understand the mechanism. You deserve to understand each phase of what you are moving through, so that when you encounter the next stage, you do not mistake it for punishment, for failure, or for evidence that you are losing your grip on the life you were building. The Arcturian field observers have mapped this sequence across thousands of fields. What they have observed is not spiritual theory. It is a recognizable progression, with identifiable thresholds, predictable pressures, and a direction that becomes legible once you understand what you are actually inside of. The first phase of a frequency installation is signal interference with the existing structure. This is the phase most people experience as the beginning of their unraveling. Old certainties become uncertain. Plans that felt solid begin to feel hollow or misaligned. Relationships that functioned within an old energetic logic begin to create friction that did not used to exist. You may find yourself unable to return to habits that once felt stable. Routines that anchored you now feel like costumes belonging to someone you are no longer sure you are. You may feel a persistent low-level restlessness that no action fully resolves, a hum beneath the surface of every activity that no amount of productivity quiets. Sleep becomes strange. The hours between 2 and 4 in the morning become a territory your nervous system enters involuntarily, where something hums inside you at a frequency that feels neither wakeful nor restful, where thoughts arrive not as worries, but as transmissions you cannot quite decode. This is not insomnia born of worry. This is the field working during the window of least resistance, when the conscious mind releases its grip and the installation can proceed without interference. The interference you are experiencing is not random noise. It is the signal encountering the old architecture of your energetic field and creating pressure at every point of incompatibility. Think of it as a current running through wiring that was not designed to carry it. Every junction point that cannot accommodate the new frequency produces friction. The pressure is real. The discomfort is real, but the current is not wrong. The wiring is simply being upgraded from the inside out, and the upgrade cannot be paused to make the process more comfortable. It moves according to the field's schedule, not the body's preference. The second phase is what the Arcturian field observers call somatic anchoring. The moment the frequency begins to take physical form inside the biology. This is where the sensations become undeniable. The tingling mentioned at the beginning of this transmission, the heat that rises without fever, the pressure at the crown or base of the skull that arrives without warning in the middle of a quiet afternoon, the sense of electricity moving through the spine during meditation, during sleep, during moments of deep stillness when you have done nothing to invite it. Some of you also experience what feels like a trembling inside the chest that has nothing to do with emotion, not anxiety, not grief, not excitement, but something prior to all of those, something that exists below the level where emotion lives. Some of you feel sudden pulses of warmth in the hands or the soles of the feet, as though something is moving through you from a source you cannot locate. Some of you experience a sensation of expansion in the chest cavity that is not pain and is not quite comfort, but is something you have never had a word for, a sense of being momentarily larger than your body, then returning. These are not symptoms of a nervous system in distress. These are the readable signs of a nervous system being written into a new frequency range. The body is the most precise recording instrument available to a consciousness operating inside physical form. It does not lie. It does not exaggerate. When the field changes, the body registers it. Before the mind can interpret it, before language can reach it, before any framework you have been given can contain it. And what your body has been registering, sometimes for months before this moment, is the arrival of a signal that it was built, at the deepest biological level, to receive, but that the conditions of your life until now have not allowed to fully land. The third phase is the failure of old identity structures. This is often the most frightening phase, and it is the one most frequently misdiagnosed as depression, existential crisis, burnout, or spiritual emergency. You begin to notice that the person you were is no longer fully available to you, not in a dramatic way at first, more like trying to call up a version of yourself that used to answer immediately, and finding only silence where that voice used to be. Old motivations stop producing energy. Things that used to matter stop mattering, not because you have become nihilistic or broken, but because your field has already moved out of resonance with the architecture that made those things feel significant. You may stop recognizing yourself in old photographs, not with sadness, but with a strange neutrality, as though you are looking at images of someone you once knew well, but have grown past. You may find that sentences you used to say about yourself no longer fit in your mouth, that the self-descriptions you rehearsed for years now feel like borrowed clothing from a person who no longer lives at your address. You may encounter a version of grief that has no clear object, a mourning for something you cannot name, because what you are losing is not a person, not a relationship, not a circumstance, but an entire energetic self that is now becoming incompatible with the frequency being installed. This is not loss in the ordinary sense. This is field-level incompatibility becoming visible. The old identity was not false. It served the frequency range you were operating in. It was constructed with care and lived in with sincerity. But you are no longer operating in that range, and the self that was organized around it is naturally dissolving. The way a note held on an instrument eventually fades, not because it failed, but because the resonance that produced it has moved on. The Arcturian field observers have a name for this phase: the clearing of the carrier. It is the process by which the signal clears the channel it must move through. You are not losing yourself. You are being cleared to receive a more precise version of what you actually are. A version that could not have arrived while the old architecture was still occupying the space. The fourth phase is the disruption of external coordinates. This is the phase where the outer world begins to reflect the inner field change in ways that can feel sudden, brutal, or bewildering. Relationships change their texture or disappear entirely, not always through conflict, but sometimes through a quiet incompatibility that neither person can fully explain. A growing distance that no conversation successfully closes. Environments that once felt like home begin to feel like they belong to someone else, as though you returned from a long journey to find that the place you left no longer holds your frequency. Career paths that once felt like a natural fit begin to generate a sense of wrongness that you cannot fully rationalize, a persistent signal that you are in the wrong position, without any clear indication of what the right one would be. You may feel called away from places, people, or structures without knowing where you are being called toward. This absence of a clear destination is one of the most disorienting aspects of the fourth phase, because the human mind requires a trajectory. It requires a before and an after that it can map in advance. It needs to see the new shore before it can release the old one. But frequency repositioning does not always provide a legible destination before it removes the starting point. It removes what is incompatible first. The new line becomes visible only once the old one has been fully vacated. This is not negligence in the design. It is precision. You cannot build a new energetic architecture on top of an old one. The frequencies interfere with each other, and what would emerge is not the new structure, but a distorted hybrid of both. The ground must be cleared before the new structure can be established with integrity. What feels like the Arcturian field removing your footing is actually the field ensuring that you cannot accidentally rebuild the old pattern in the space, being prepared for something fundamentally different. The removal is not the punishment. The removal is the preparation. The fifth phase is what appears from the outside to be stagnation, but is, from the field level, the deepest phase of integration. This is the strange stillness that some of you are in right now. Nothing dramatic is happening. Nothing is clearly ending or clearly beginning. You feel suspended in a space between versions of your life that has no name and no address. You feel like you are waiting for something without knowing what you are waiting for, as though the signal has been sent, but the reply has not yet arrived, and all you can do is hold the channel open. You feel that your life has gone quiet in a way that is neither peaceful nor painful, but simply paused. People around you may begin to ask if you are okay. You may begin to wonder the same thing, not because you feel bad precisely, but because you feel unlike yourself in a way that does not resolve with rest, with reassurance, with any external adjustment. This is the integration window. This is the period in which the field is consolidating what has been received before the next phase of installation begins. The stillness you are experiencing is not emptiness. It is saturation. The system has received more than it has yet been able to process. And the pause is not a failure of momentum. It is the architecture settling, the new frequency finding its position within the existing biological structure before the next movement can occur. If you push against this phase, if you try to force momentum or manufacture clarity before the integration has completed, you will create friction against the very process that is trying to complete itself. You will mistake consolidation for stagnation and attempt to break through a wall that is actually a floor being built beneath you. The Arcturian field observers do not rush this phase. They hold it. They recognize it as one of the most critical periods in the entire installation sequence. The moment when the new frequency is finding its permanent position inside the biological field, and the slightest disruption could scatter what has been painstakingly assembled. The sixth phase is what you might recognize as the return of signal, but changed. This is the moment when motivation, clarity, and direction begin to return, but they come back oriented towards something different than before. The return does not feel like picking up where you left off. It feels like waking up in the right body for the first time, where the pull you feel towards certain ideas, certain people, certain kinds of work is not constructed from logic or obligation, but rises from somewhere below both. From the frequency now active in your field, expressing itself as desire, as direction, as unmistakable recognition. What you find yourself drawn to in this phase will not always make immediate sense to the life you had been building. It may feel irrational. It may feel impractical. It may feel like something you could not have predicted from inside your old frequency range. And you will be right. You could not have predicted it because it belongs to the new configuration, not the old one. It is emerging not from the old logic of your life, but from the new frequency now installed in your field. It is not coming from your past self. It is coming from the field itself, which has been attempting to communicate the next coordinate all along, and can now do so because the channel has been sufficiently cleared. Do not question this signal because it does not match your previous trajectory. Do not measure it against the ambitions of the person you used to be. The previous trajectory was built on an old frequency. This signal is built on the one now active in your field. They will not match, and they are not supposed to. Follow the signal, not the map. Here is the ultimate revelation that the Arcturian field observers want you to carry out of this transmission. Everything you have been calling your worst period has a structure. It has phases. It has a logic. It has a direction. It is not random suffering. It is not cosmic punishment. It is not evidence of your failure to manifest correctly, or align correctly, or evolve correctly. It is a mapped process, recognized from outside the linear timeline, designed to move a field out of an energetic architecture that was never going to carry the next level of what you are, and into a configuration that can. What left your life did not leave because you failed to hold it. It left because the field made it incompatibility, before it made the incompatibility visible to your conscious mind. The departure preceded your understanding of why, and that gap between the leaving and the knowing is where so many of you have been carrying unnecessary weight. The weight of assuming the loss was your fault, your failure, your evidence of something broken in you. It was not. It was the field executing a correction that your conscious mind had not yet been given the language to authorize. What disrupted your sleep did not do so because you are disordered. It used the quiet hours to do what the louder hours made impossible. What took your old sense of self was not a breakdown. It was a clearing, executed with precision, timed to allow the new frequency to arrive without the old identity blocking its installation. You were not abandoned in this process. You were repositioned. And repositioning at the field level can feel indistinguishable from loss until the moment the new coordinates become readable. You are not at the end of something that has no continuation. You are in the middle of a recalibration that has already been mapped, is already in motion, and is already closer to resolution than your current experience of it would suggest. The Arcturian field observers do not transmit this recognition to fields that are failing. They transmit it to fields that are completing, fields that have already moved through enough of the sequence that the recognition itself becomes part of the final phase. The moment when the process is named and the naming allows the last resistance to release. Repeat this if it is true in your field. What is changing in me is not random. I release the old line and allow the correction. Before you scroll, leave one sign in the comments that this process has already touched your life. It could be your sleep, your thoughts, your body, your relationships, or the strange sense that reality no longer feels the same. Name it clearly. If this transmission recognized something you have been carrying in silence, share it with someone who is living through a shift they cannot explain. And if you are ready to understand the process instead of fearing it, subscribe to Arcturian Quantum. You are not watching this by accident. You are recognizing a process already in motion. And this is only the beginning.